Thank you.
And you're live.
Good evening, and I would like to call the Monday, February 8th, 2021 Dublin City Council meeting to order. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Ambrose Grooms.
Here.
Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Here.
Mr. Keeler.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Reiner. Ms. Saludo.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn to executive session to consider the purchase of property for public purposes, personnel matters considering the employment of a public employee, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject to pending or imminent court action, preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Andy. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Keeler.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Yes.
Mr. Reiner. Mayor Ambrose Grooms.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Saludo.
Yes. Very good. I would like to remind everyone that this city council meeting will reconvene at 7 p.m. on this platform. Thank you.
Okay, let me have that thing. I'm going to move to the next meeting.
Hey, John. Hey, John.
Hey, Nate.
Greg, this is Homer. I still see you on this meeting.
Gary. Okay, so what came? No, I didn't. Cornerstone came up. Office 65 came up. Solar wind service desk came up.
Hey, John Reiner. Mr. Reiner.
Okay, good evening. So,
Maria, are you able to shut down his audio and his video?
Hey, Homer. Yes, I will. He's working
Yeah.
with Nate, and he'll be utilizing a different laptop, I believe, to join the
Yeah.
other meeting. And
Yeah.
yes, I was talking to you while I was muted, so my apologies.
Yeah, we can hear everything that he's saying right now on this one.
Right. Okay. Very good. I'm going to mute everybody that's still showing on here.
Okay, you got him muted now. I see.
Yes, we're good.
Hey, Maria,
Yes,
can you send Colleen Gilger a link for this meeting?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Okay, Maria, can you let me know who we are missing?
Sure will. Give me one moment.
Thank you.
Maria, can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you. I'd say we are all here.
Very good, thank you. And we are live, is that correct?
Yes, we are.
Great. Good evening and welcome to the February 28th, 2021 regular Dublin City Council meeting. In these extraordinary times, we are insistent upon the flexibility in our rapidly changing environment. Given the status of the current pandemic and the avenues allowed to us by the state legislature, we will continue to conduct our meetings virtually to maintain the safety of council, staff, attendees, and certainly the public at large. You can access the live stream on the city's website or on the city's YouTube channel. In order to submit any questions or comments during these meetings, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. These questions and comments will be relayed to City Council by the Director of Communications and Public Information during the meeting. We want to accommodate public participation and comment to the greatest extent possible. We welcome your comments on public business. We do ask that you please refrain from making inappropriate comments, and we certainly do appreciate your patience in the midst of all of this. With that, I would like to ask Homer Rogers if he would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Homer. This evening we do have a special presentation from Scott Dring regarding the 21 hospitality forecast. So, Scott, welcome. We're getting a little feedback. You have multiple devices on. Okay. Well, we'll just turn it over to you. Welcome. Thanks for being here tonight.
Great. Thanks for having me. Great to see all of you again. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to kind of look forward and give you some projections. But before doing that, I want to thank you again for the $300,000 grant that you provided as part of the hospitality industry restart plan back in May. 100% of that going to sales and marketing. You've been receiving our weekly updates since the pandemic started, how those monies have been used, the results, and so forth. And I'll highlight just a few of those here in just a few minutes. But I can tell you the support was instrumental in helping the entire industry really weather the storm the last 11 months or so. We'll be finishing up that money here in early March. I'm going to share here. There it is. All right. First projection that we're seeing is that this summer we're going to see a bit of a travel boom for the leisure market, which is positive news. As you know, we look at research on a daily basis, just on traveler intentions and such. And as of this afternoon, 91% of Americans have travel plans in 2021. So there's a lot of pent-up demand out there. 57% are planning to visit friends and relatives and staying closer to home trips, which is great for us in our market. We're working with Governor DeWine's office to loosen the travel restrictions when it's safe to do so with some point. We're really encouraged by his Invest in Ohio plan that you've probably seen that includes a substantial investment toward a Tourism Ohio campaign, a campaign for travel and tourism. Here in Dublin, we're seeing some positive trends as well. January was the first month we reached pre-pandemic levels on website traffic, up 11%. There's an increase in destination guide requests, e-travel club, and there's a lot of athletic events on the books for the summer as well. So it's pointing to all a positive summer thus far. I can tell you one of the major reasons we've seen this increase is due to our in-state campaign that we launched in January. Again, thanks to your support. This is an awareness campaign to make sure when people are ready to travel, they do consider Dublin. and make sure that they're aware of all our safety protocols that we have in place. It's running in all Ohio markets. You can kind of see the creative here. These are digital ads with one image appearing at a time in sequence. The final image promoting our DublinSafe.com website that has all our safety protocols as well. The top row there you see is for couples, the bottom for families. It can be seen on a huge network of sites such as CNN, Yahoo, MSN, etc. You'll notice too on the creative, there's no crowds, no event photos. We're really featuring outdoor product activities. And that's what people really are looking to do this spring and summer. And this is just one element of the campaign that's generating great results so far. We're on track to reach almost 4 million impressions. And we're hoping to launch a similar campaign regionally in April if resources are available. And that will be in Pittsburgh, Detroit, Indy, and Charleston, Huntington, West Virginia. And the second projection is it'll continue to be a long winter for our restaurants. You know, Dublin's top 10% of our restaurants are going to survive and we'll get through this. I think we're more concerned about the other 90% that are going to have some issues. Another campaign we've created that is all local, that's encouraging Dublin and Central Ohio residents to support our residents. You'll see here, it reinforces how all of us residents can support residents and highlights what they're doing to keep everyone safe. It's a completely social campaign, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. It runs through March and is our way of helping restaurants during the winter. We've had great success on this as well. A click-through rate of almost 7%, which is pretty unheard of. The industry average is only 2% with that. I know the city has done a tremendous amount to support our restaurants, providing us money for the Visit Dublin Restart Plan, allowing creative outdoor dining. We're truly appreciative of Dana's support and staff support and leadership. We think we can always do more. You know, I won't beat you up anymore on the data, but I know it'll be a huge boost to restaurants and retail on both sides to our downtown Dublin economy. Simply put, it will attract people in the area that will spend money. Third projection is that our hotels will start to rebound in the second quarter, but we're still a long ways off from corporate travel returning. Not surprising, you probably guessed 2020 was the worst year on record for our hotel industry, nationally, internationally, and locally. What may surprise you is right now in the first quarter of 2021, it will be the worst quarter of the pandemic for our hotels. There's just no corporate travel going on, there's no leisure going on, there's no sports activity, it's too cold. So right now, it's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately. As we speak, more than 60% of our Dublin hotel jobs are gone. We're hoping to get a majority of those back by the end of the year. Here's a graph that kind of talks about our hotel occupancy. You can see it was pretty amazing. This time last year, we were telling you that we hit a record amount of occupancy at 73%, and this year we hit a record low. And I think if you look at this, all our data and our models tell us for every 5 percentage points, if you go up and down, it's about a $2 million economic impact. So, you know, we're talking a loss of tens of millions of dollars for our economy, for our hotels, restaurants, and so forth. We won't even get to that 73.5% either until probably 2024 as well. So it'll take us a while to get back to that level. Average daily rates, it's kind of like putting salt in the wound here. You know, we're having less people in town, and the people that are coming to Dublin are paying $23 less for a room. So it's less revenue, which impacts obviously our bed tax revenue. You know, this graph kind of shows by day of week. And I think I threw this up here just to show the importance of the corporate market in Dublin. Tuesday and Wednesday, the greenest last year at 19. Tuesday and Wednesday has historically always been our busiest days with corporate travel. You can see the hit that it took this year. The interesting part is we put all our resources toward the leisure markets thanks to a restart plan. You kind of see Saturday was actually our busiest time of the busiest day of the year last year. Looking ahead, we have that statewide campaign that's going to help hotels down the road. The regional campaign we talked about will help. The sports business continues to be a bright spot for our hotels. You know, we just had a hockey tournament this past weekend. Spring, summer, youth sports look strong, soccer, baseball, others going. So I think that's going to really help the hotels. You know, even though we're down one of our 2 salesperson, we continue to book events and conferences. We have several events we booked for 2022. 2021, later in 2021 as well. We have a couple of buses coming out in the summer, so we're still plugging away. It's just kind of in the not the near future. And I talked about corporate travel. I think we're hoping late summer. But, we're fortunate to have a lot of great representatives on our board from Cardinal and AEP and such. And, Cardinal, Honda, Nationwide, others, they're still working at home. And most of them have said no travel unless absolutely necessary. So we're not going to see that corporate travel come back until later in the summer. And to kind of muddy the waters even more is we have 3 new hotels coming in the market as well. If you've probably heard of Spring Hill Suites just opened and Bridge Park downtown Dublin last week, and we have 2 more opening here this year as well. Kind of more on a positive note, I think our tremendous outdoor product is going to be a huge advantage in our recovery. All the research and industry research tells us the travelers are looking for outdoor activities, beaches, national parks. We'll have record years this year. Obviously, we don't have a beach, but we do have tremendous outdoor products. Visit Dublin ourselves have created a lot of outdoor products for residents and visitors, our picnic packs for restaurants, our ferry door trail, Celtic cocktail trail, walking tours and such. We will and have continued to secure media stories on this great outdoor product and adventures we have to regional and national media. We're even working with a memorial tournament in the state of Ohio on a unique golf trail this year. There will actually be 6 professional golf championships in Ohio this summer, a great opportunity to showcase the state and the Dublin as well. And all our statewide and regional campaigns will be very strategic with a focus on our great outdoor product. Our final projection is that our community's collaborative spirit that has helped us through this pandemic will continue. I think all our efforts, even from day one, we've reached out to everyone and anyone during this pandemic to help, and every single organization, every single person has gone above and beyond to help. We continue to work with Ohio Health and OSU Webster Medical Center as our safety partners, relying on them to help us with messaging. We are resurrecting in March our 6-foot gallery with Cardinal and the Arts Council that will be in downtown Dublin that reinforces our social distancing and safety information. Our Downtown Strategic Alliance continues to meet and work hard. We're real excited about a program, a Heroes program that you're going to hear about the next week or so with the Arts program. And regionally, we continue to collaborate with Experience Commerce, the Restaurant Association, Hotel Association, and others. And of course, we communicate and collaborate almost on a daily basis with your city staff. We've taken a leadership role in communicating and reinforcing safety protocols since that pandemic has started and will continue. Our DublinSafe.com website continues to be a go-to resource. Local safety campaigns and other initiatives will continue to be part of that ongoing effort. It's critical that we continue to focus on the safety message because 49% of Americans still are feeling unsafe. Traveling is unsafe, which seems like a really high number. But it's actually, that number's been decreasing in recent weeks, and actually it's the lowest it's been since April. So people are starting to get some confidence as well. To kind of wrap up, I can tell you that we've created budgets and marketing plans that are in 6-month increments during this pandemic because things are just so fluid. We have a dedicated amount of bed tax revenue that you have given to us. Thank you. We appreciate that. And we'll work with Dana, Matt, and Council's Finance Committee to determine the bed tax support for the final 6 months of this year. I will say that we have a plan, a strategy in place that's working. It's just a matter of how aggressive we want to be, how much money we want to put behind our media plan and outreach. There'll be a tremendous amount of competition out there vying for the same travelers. The more aggressive we are, the better it'll be for our industry and economy. So again, thank you on behalf of all our entire hospitality industry, our hotels, our restaurants, our retail, our board, and all you've done to help us the past 11 months.
Well, thanks, Scott. I know you all have been working really hard, getting ready to come out of this, and we certainly do appreciate that, and appreciate the updates on how the funding that we've allocated to the hotel and restaurant and travel industry is being spent. So we sure do appreciate that. I don't know if anyone has any questions they have for Scott right now, but appreciate the update, really good information, and we're looking forward to great things coming into the spring and summer.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks. Have a great evening. Next I'd like to take a moment for citizen comments. This is the opportunity for citizens to comment on any topic that is not on this evening's agenda. I'll check in with Jenny in the clerk's office. Jenny, have we had any comments come through the clerk's office?
No, we have not.
Great, thank you. And Sue, have we received any through the web chat or the public information office?
Good evening, Mayor. Yes, we have. I will read a comment that came through the website this afternoon. It is from Ann Fisher at 6000 Holywell Drive in Dublin. And her subject is new bylaw. She comments, can we put a new bylaw amendment in place to prevent large advocacy signs from being displayed on public property near schools? At Scioto High School last week, young students were exposed to graphic anti-abortion signs. The bylaw could be written to prevent anyone from displaying or carrying a sign bigger than 3.5 inches by 5 inches that publicly expresses an opinion on an issue or cause within 150 meters of a school on a school day. There could be fines imposed up top $500. The signs were not only triggering for some young students, but as someone who has suffered through 3 spontaneous miscarriages, it was triggering for myself personally. Thank you.
Great, appreciate that comment certainly, and you delivering it, Sue. I'll ask Jennifer Radler to chime in on what the what our legal options are and what is available to us relative to that.
Sure, thanks, Mayor. There are actually at least 2 United States Supreme Court cases that would prohibit the city from taking the action that's requested by the commenter. Reed versus Town of Gilbert, which curtails limitations on signs and limitations on speech more generally that are based on content, and Snyder v. Phelps, which limits the ability to regulate even highly offensive speech directed to sensitive audiences. So we have those 2 cases, and under Snyder, that case would prohibit city regulation that the First Amendment provides a right for people to present even offensive messages from public right-of-way or public viewing. And so the Supreme Court would put the onus on the person who's viewing the message to avert it. So we are very limited in what we can do. And it's our understanding that this happens in the public right-of-way, which is a traditional public forum. So I would be happy to reach out to the resident and explain this and answer any additional questions.
Great, I'd appreciate that. I don't know if any other council members have comments, but I think probably working with the resident and maybe getting a better understanding of what they're asking for relative to, you know, what avenues are available to us, and then perhaps council could, you know, have conversation regarding that once we had the outcome, you know, once we knew the outcome of that conversation.
Sure.
Anything further from council? Okay. Great. If you would reach out, Jennifer, I'm sure Sue can get you the contact information of that individual and you can reach out. Appreciate that. Okay, next on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? There are 3 meeting minutes and 2 liquor permit transfers. Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to second reading, public hearing ordinances, ordinance 01-21.
Accepting the regular annexation of 4.998 acres, more or less, from Jerome Township, Union County to the city of Dublin.
And our staff report this evening, I believe, is from, oh, there he is, Mr. Paul Hammersmith. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. Regarding this ordinance this evening, I have no new information to provide regarding the acceptance of the requested annexation. However, regarding the fee waiver requests that accompanied this annexation, council referred the matter to the Community Development Committee. In referring it to the Community Development Committee, council wished to have them review a fee waiver policy. And then additionally, the Community Development Committee was to discuss and make a recommendation on the requested fee waiver. The Community Development Committee met on January 20th to discuss these matters. Regarding the discussion, it was decided that there are really 4 different parameters to be considered fundamentally when fee waivers are to be acted upon. The first is public property, such as city-owned or township-owned property, is being annexed. Second is an island of property lying within a township that is surrounded by property within the Dublin corporate limits is being annexed. And then secondarily, hardship or third hardship conditions, such as financial or failed system as determined by the Franklin County Public Health. So for instance, if there was a failed on-lot septic system, that they would have that sort of hardship that would require sewer service or some sort of utility service. And then lastly or fourthly, the property is to be annexed is part of an economic development project. So in applying these 4 different factors to the annexation fee waiver request from Mr. Cortola, the committee felt that the request did not meet any of the factors previously enumerated above. As such, the committee recommended denial of the fee waiver request, although they expressed much appreciation for the impact Mr. Cortola's business contributes to the city. Staff is happy to make any recommendations to the proposed policy update as suggested by either the committee members or council as a whole. So regarding the recommendation on this ordinance, first, staff does recommend approval of ordinance 01-21, accepting this annexation of 4.98 acres, more or less, from Jerome Township. Annexation fee policy. The Community Development Committee recommends acceptance of their recommendation of approval of an updated annexation fee waiver policy, that allows council consideration of waiver requests when the 4 conditions previously enumerated apply. It is the burden of the property owner seeking the waiver to prove how their request is justified and fits within these waiver categories. And then lastly, regarding the Mr. Cortola annexation fee waiver request, the Community Development Committee recommends acceptance of their recommendation to deny Mr. Cortola's annexation fee waiver request. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Paul. John,
You're welcome.
do you have any further comments relative to the Community Development Committee comments? Hearing none. Okay. Sue, have we received any public comment through Public Information Office on this?
We have not.
Great, thank you. And Jenny, have we received any through the clerk's office?
We have not.
Further conversation from council, questions, discussion? Anything for Paul?
Making it too easy on me.
It's because you're so good, Paul. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of motions and votes on this. First will be for the ordinance itself. I will make a motion to accept the Community Development Committee recommendation regarding the annexation fee waiver policy exceptions as being hardship economic development, removing islands of township, and incorporating public property related to annexations. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. And that's on the Community Development Committee recommendations. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Ambrose Grooms,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner,
Yes.
Ms. Saludo,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Yes.
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Okay, the second motion is to accept the Community Development Committee recommendations and to deny the fee waiver. I will make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I think that was Andy nudged him out at the tape there. I'm not certain. Okay, Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Yes.
Ms. Aludo,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner, Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
and Mayor Ambrose Grooms.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. Our next will be
Thank you,
introduction,
council members.
first reading, public hearing ordinances, ordinance 02-21.
Mayor, we have to actually take a vote on the actual ordinance for passing the annexation. We hopped over that. Do you mind if we do that real quick?
Okay. Okay, I will make a motion that we approve ordinance 01-21. That is accepting the regular annexation.
So moved.
I'll second.
Ms.
Thank
Aludo,
Yes.
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner,
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Appreciate your help. Introduction, first reading, public hearing ordinances, ordinance 02-21.
Rezoning approximately 11.37 acres from R Rural District to PUD Planned Unit Development District for development of 30 single-family homes with 2.62 acres of open space located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Shire Rings and Cosgray Roads under the provisions of Zoning Code Section 153.050.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, our staff report this evening will be from Zach Hounshell, and there he is. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you. Great to be with you all this evening. Let me just pull this PowerPoint up and give me one moment. All right, good evening, council members. Before you this evening is an introduction and first reading for ordinance 02-21 for the rezoning and preliminary development plan for the Ayrshire Farms development. The site is located southeast of the intersection of Shire Rings Road and Cosgray Road. The site highlighted in yellow is approximately 11.37 acres in size and contains 3 parcels currently zoned rural. The largest parcel, which is furthest west on the site, is 6.77 acres and is used for agriculture and contains minimal natural features. The 2 western parcels are a total of 4.6 acres in size, and one of which contains a leach field for one of the existing homes that is located in Washington Township to the north of the property. The site is located north of Ballantrae, sub-area E. Shown on the screen is the future land use plan that is found within the community plan. This site is designated as a mixed residential low density site. The mixed residential low density designation allows for up to 3 dwelling units per acre and allows for a mix of housing options ranging from attached single family, detached single family, and low density multifamily. The designation also allows for smaller sites to include just a single housing type scaled to the surrounding development context. This application is proposing approximately 2.63 dwelling units per acre, which fits within this designation and provides a transition from Ballantrae sub-area E, which sits at a 2.03 dwelling units per acre, and acts as a transition to the West Innovation District to the north, which would be a much more densely developed area in the future. Shown on the screen is the thoroughfare plan. The thoroughfare plan takes into consideration both Shire Rings Road and Cosgray Road adjacent to this site. Both streets are designated as collector streets per the thoroughfare plan. The applicant will be providing additional right-of-way along Shire Rings Road to the north to allow for a left turn lane into this development. The proposal before you all today is for the development of an 11.37 acre site to allow for the creation of 30 single family lots, 3 public streets, and approximately 2.62 acres of open space, which will be split between 3 reserves A, B, and C. The applicant originally went before the Planning and Zoning Commission for an informal review in September of 2020, before going formally to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a rezoning preliminary development plan and preliminary plat application. The applicant has made adjustments to the application based on staff and commission comments by reducing the density of the site from 34 lots to 30 lots, This equals a 13.3% decrease in density for this site. By increasing the open space acreage from 2.24 acres to 2.62 acres, and by adding additional path connections and additional active and passive neighborhood amenities surrounding these open spaces and retention ponds. Lot 18, which is highlighted on the screen, contains the leach field that was previously mentioned that services the residents to the north of that lot. A temporary easement will be placed over this lot to prohibit development of the lot until the leach field is abandoned or is not necessary for the operation of that northern site. The applicant has added a section to the development text stating the applicant is responsible for the maintenance of this lot until it is sold for development as requested by the Planning and Zoning Commission with the formal application in December. Per the requirements listed in the subdivision regulations of the zoning code, the applicant is required to provide 1.13 acres of open space on the site. The applicant is providing 2.62 acres, which is meeting this requirement. Reserve A, which is highlighted in red, is approximately 1.48 acres in size. The reserve is proposed to include a retention pond, which can be seen in the site plan on the screen, and is permitted to include a gazebo, a walking path, entry feature, and landscaping for active use of the space. These items have been included following revisions to the site plan from the informal review in September for this application and are intended to encourage gathering spaces for the neighborhood. Reserve B, which is highlighted in blue on the screen, is 0.28 acres in size. This reserve will include the entry feature, will include an entry feature and will be landscaped for passive use. Reserve C is approximately 0.86 acres in size and is highlighted in yellow. It is located in the southeast portion of the site. The reserve is proposed to include a retention pond and is permitted to include benches and landscaping for passive use as well. The applicant has provided the development text specifying the requirements of each lot on this site, which are displayed on the screen. Each lot within this development will have a 20-foot setback, a 20-foot front yard setback for principal structures. The side yard setback and building separation is split into two designations. Highlighted in red are lots 1 through 15. There will be a 6-foot minimum side yard setback for these lots with a minimum 14-foot separation between structures for lots 1 through 15 as well. The side yard setback discussion that has taken place over the previous months was taken into consideration with this application. The applicant added the building separation requirements following feedback from the informal review as an additional parameter to create a less dense neighborhood. The relationship between the minimum side yard setback and the minimum distance between the structures is to allow for more variety in building placement on a given lot with these 6-foot minimum side yard setbacks, but also requiring greater distances between houses to improve the building separation. The applicant has also done this for lots 16 through 30 with the 6-foot minimum side yard setback, as that is consistent throughout the entire development. However, for these lots, there is a minimum 16-foot separation between structures. For the rear yard setback, it is also split into 3 designations. Lots 1 through 5, which are highlighted in yellow, have a 45-foot setback from Crosby Road. This is to be consistent with the setback seen on just south of the site with Ballantrae Subarea E. Lots 6 through 22, highlighted on the screen, have a 30-foot setback. The 30-foot setback is specific for sites within this development that are adjacent and back up to existing residential lots to the rear of their lot. And lots 23 through 30, which are highlighted in blue and located at the center of this development, they have a 20-foot setback with patios being able to encroach 10 feet into the rear yard, as these are all the smallest lots on the site, and this is to allow for additional amenities for the rear yard of these property owners. The applicant has provided architectural requirements within the development text, as well as conceptual architectural characters, which are shown on the screen for reference. The intent of the character of these homes are to be reminiscent of the traditional architectural styles that incorporate front porches with modest setbacks, emphasizing neighborhood interaction. The applicant has provided a number of cladding and trim materials, which are shown and listed on the screen. Chimneys are also permitted to be finished with brick, stone, or manufactured stone, and garage doors for these homes will be decorative with a carriage style look. A development text lists that homes shall be white, earth toned, or any additional muted color that would complement the surrounding neighborhoods. Staff has reviewed this application to all applicable rezoning and preliminary development plan criteria and recommended approval to Planning and Zoning Commission in December with 10 conditions. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval to City Council on December 10th with these 10 conditions. Since this meeting, the applicant has worked actively with staff to comply with these conditions and have completed conditions 1, 6, 7, 9, and 10. The remainder of the conditions allow for staff to work with the applicant to finalize items that are required with the final development plan. Staff will be recommending approval of Ordinance 02-21 to City Council with the 10 conditions for the February 22nd meeting. If Council has any questions for staff, I would be happy to answer them. Otherwise, Todd Foley and his team, the applicants, are here to answer any questions and concerns you may have. Thank you.
Great, I appreciate that, Zach. I'd like to take a moment and check in with the clerk's office. Jenny, have we received any public comment relative to this case?
We have not.
Thank you. And Sue, have we through the web chat?
No, we have not.
Great, appreciate that. Okay, council questions, discussion?
Hey, Zach, is there a additional left-hand turn lane on the main thoroughfare coming into the subdivision? Are we still applying that to all these subdivisions so that traffic doesn't get backed up when people are pulling in and out of these?
Yeah, the TIS study does include a left-hand turn lane with this development, so they will be constructing that with the development of this site. Great.
Question, there's some discussion in City Council as to not to use retention basins as our green space. Is the staff well aware of that?
Yes, we are, and I would defer to the applicant to speak towards how they've activated the rest of the space to still meet the requirements of the intent of the zoning code, but also improve the open spaces that they've presented here today.
Good evening, Todd Foley with Pod Design here on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Reiner. We have kind of taken two different approaches with our two retention basins. If we start at the one that's along Shire Rings Road, with the extension of the bike path that currently is on Cosgray, traversing across the north part of the site and then moving east, we provided kind of a pull-off, if you will, to a path network that connects with our new public streets internally. We've provided kind of a node that we kind of see being a long-term, a kind of a gathering spot, and depending upon how the path connection moves along Shire Rings Road with future development, you know, this kind of intersection or corner could be somewhat of a pedestrian or a bicycle type of node. So we've placed, we're envisioning some sort of either a gazebo or a shelter area there that'll allow people to come from both outside the community, but also within the community, interact. Yeah, you'll have the aesthetic view of the pond area. There is a little internal circuit path area that'll have some benches. Obviously lots of landscaping around through there. So that type of atmosphere and interaction is conducive with the target demographic that the applicant is focusing on. And then if we shift to the other pond in the southeast corner, we've taken more of a passive approach to that. We have provided a sidewalk that pulls off of the public street sidewalk. We've provided a little node that will have some benches and will allow for, more passive recreation with the pond. Obviously, the ponds are going to have fountains in them, and they'll be landscaped. So that currently is our approach. We're not anticipating or targeting, the target demographic, as I mentioned, is kind of more of a mature buyer, but yet they're not necessarily to an active senior or retired type level. They may be a family that has, high school children or college age children. They're ready to smart size, but not downsize. So typical kind of open space that might include, playgrounds and things of that nature that's more active. We've not focused on just because of the target demographics. So hopefully that answers your question. So appreciate
Todd,
yes, sir.
it looks like the units are all 3 cars. Is that correct? Because there wouldn't be enough space to add an additional garage if later on somebody wanted to do that. Is that right?
That is correct, sir. Yeah, we're planning there are multiple footprints and multiple buildings. The developer is planning on programming these lots with the different housing products that are going to be available, and they'll all have 3-car garage available on them.
Now, is there a programmed HOA for this subdivision?
Yeah, these are all going to be fee simple lots, so there will be a forced and funded HOA for the project.
And in your analysis, is it enough to maintain the green space and the ponds?
It's been our approach that is we know that's going to be our responsibility as a part of that. The maintenance of all that through the discussion with staff, with both engineering and from previous projects I've worked on. So the developer is aware that that's going to be a requirement of that HOA. And then as we understand it, the typical maintenance of the actual pond itself still would lie with the city, but everything else around it, all the green space, all the open space, all the mowing and landscaping and things of that nature falls on the burden of the HOA.
Yeah, Todd, we'd want to be assured that the HOA would be forced and funded enough to make sure that these people don't come back to the city asking us to take over the green space, the common area. Now, you're sort of in the conservation design area that we were talking about for the last 20 years. Was there any direction towards conservation design for this, or was that even mentioned or brought into the discussion?
Not specifically from all of our discussion necessarily with staff or with planning commission. This is a unique parcel because of its adjacency to the roads, the development of Ballantrae, the developments that are to the east, and it's going to be kind of a particular type of solution that's going to have to exist here. So we've this meets kind of the program, the desired intent for the housing product that the developer's looking to bring to the market, and so that's how we've kind of arrived at where we're at.
Now, you're a landscape architect, right, or a planner?
Yes, sir. Landscape architect.
Okay. And then I'm just curious about the screening, the abutting roads project next to it. I couldn't tell from the the site plan because I'm looking at a computer. So so what do you I don't know what you worked out really as far as is it evergreen screening? Is it dense? Is it set at 10-foot cadences? The other choice, and I don't think you got enough land to do it, is use mounding. So can you make a comment on that
Sure.
part of it?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So on Cosgray, we have an existing condition with the bike path that actually comes up from the south. So we already kind of have a hard surface there that we're dealing with. It's our intent and it's our commitment through the development text that we are going to extend the Ballantrae buffer treatment that's there from a plant palette and a quantity and intensity and density, the types of materials, all the way up Cosgray to the roundabout area. As we turn the corner and move easterly across Shire Rings, we still intend to provide trees, evergreens, ornamentals, and shade trees. We do want to try to capture some more view vistas into the site, looking at the retention pond, the open space areas. You'll get these are 4-sided architectural buildings, so And we've made additional commitments for the lots that are on the north side of the project that would be visible from Shire Rings, to make sure that we are providing architectural elements that are pleasing to those that are moving past the site. So it's not quite as dense, but it'll be more more filtered in their planting scheme. And then obviously our perimeter buffers. We're going to be working with the existing trees as best we can through there, working with staff and with Brian Martin and all that. So
one problem we've been having, and it sort of went by pretty quickly, and that is outdoor spaces that are hard surface for the people who end up with these units. And is there enough room? I heard 10-foot mentioned. I don't know if that was the limitation or just a mention of that particular figure. But say somebody wants a 16-foot by 16-foot patio, will that encroach on a setback or on the neighbor's property? These things are wedged in there pretty tight, so that has been a problem so far with some of these projects. So can you comment on that?
I can. So we have, as I mentioned, there's a variety of building designs, and there's also with that a variety of lot sizes. So you can obviously tell by looking at the plan, there's some different depths to them. So there are certain lots that are not going to afford to have a certain building type on it that might, say, have a little deeper profile to it or not. But we've made sure that with the exception of, so for lots 1 through 15, all the way up to 22, those lots will all be able to accommodate an appropriate outdoor activity space, be it patio or covered patio or fire pit area, or those type of activity spaces. The lots 23 through 30 are the ones where we have a little bit different approach. Those are, they're not lots that have significant rear yards. We see that there are people out there that may not desire to have long, deep backyards that they have to mow and things like that. So, and with the location of our entry drive, we're really, that's where the site has to be accessed. We really can't move it any closer to the roundabout. So we kind of got fixed from that perspective. And so that's why our development text is notating that those lots can have a slight encroachment into their rear setbacks to accommodate a patio area or a deck, depending upon how the lot grades. We do have a stormwater easement back through there, which we will not be able to interfere with at all with those lots. So that's the geometry that we've ended up with. So.
Yeah, the other question is, are most of the outdoor spaces accessed from the backs of the units? Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, so as far as the private residences, the outdoor patios, things like that, there would be access through the back, through the rear of the unit, through a slider door, man door, things like that. So like you would accustomed to see on a single family lot.
With one thing that's really been rather upsetting and something we're trying to stop, and I know we have in certain subdivisions already up here that have stronger controls maybe than even the city, and that is on the slider doors that are 2 and 3 feet off the ground, you end up having, and I don't know what your intent is or your builder's intent, and that would be a temporary wooden stairs that sometimes stays there for 20, 30 years and dumps out onto a grass panel in the backyard, and very unsightly. Usually they're done out of womanized lumber and sort of wrecks the entire neighborhood. So is there any commitment on your part or the developer's part to have more fixed access out the back, or even, and actually from a planning standpoint, I'd love to see the patio spaces worked out so that you actually know what they're going to be and people buying them know what they're going to be. And then what's the material that accesses the point of exit, the finished floor elevation down to the patio? Is it something suitable, stable? Right now, the worst thing is just seeing a bunch of 3 or 4 wooden steps that are temporary nailed onto a house. And unfortunately, they seem to stay there sometimes forever on certain houses. And they really depreciate the overall value of the neighborhood and its aesthetics. So I'd like to know I like to see, you know, what kind of patio spaces you're planning to put behind these things, what the material is that's going to move from the unit to the actual patio space, so that we have all that really worked out. It doesn't become something that's, you know, I buy this thing and now I'm stuck with this unit, and, you know, my neighbor across the way is rather unaesthetic attempt to try to not care or not do anything with his egress. That problem doesn't exist here. So I'm hoping that we can resolve some of that. And maybe you guys figure out, you know, what we can really allow as a 10 by 10 patio or a 10 by 20. So we have some kind of idea. And then, you know, another interesting issue that comes up when you're tightening them up, and I think you said it was lot 20, there's lots going to 20, is what's the buffer? So you have a patio, the guy behind you has a patio space, and more Americans are now appreciating outdoor spaces. Is there enough room for a buffer between the two patio spaces so that, you know, you don't really look at your neighbor and, you know, those kind of problems. So, I mean, these aesthetic things are really important, and it's going to add a heck of a lot to the quality of the overall project.
Okay.
Okay, other questions, Jane?
Right. Todd, you know, I would reiterate what Councilman Reiner said about trying to find a way to be sure that those who buy the lots understand how much patio they can have, because in our Board of Zoning Appeals, we are constantly getting folks who say they bought these places, they want to put a patio in and didn't have an understanding of how much space. Then they want encroachments, and it's creating quite a dilemma for our Board of Zoning Appeals. So if there's any way that the lots could have some sort of designation about what would be an allowable size patio when they go to buy, I agree with Councilman Reiner. I think it would alleviate a lot of confusion on the parts of the homeowner as to what they can have. They might buy a bigger lot, for that matter, just to have a bigger patio, because, you know, they don't always appreciate what the setbacks mean and where a footprint of a patio can be. So I agree. I think that's something that's worth taking a look at.
Okay.
So just for a point of clarification on that, so on lots 23 to 30, would it facilitate a patio at all, or something of a certain size? That I wasn't quite clear on your, because I share this concern, your comment.
Yeah, so I know in our packet we provided a conceptual kind of, because we know that these type of questions, it's really hard to understand when we just show a blank lot and everybody, you know, just has to picture what it might be. So we've actually taken some of the footprints. It's not a final kind of confirmed layout, but it's our best shot at what we currently know about the design of the houses and the parameters that we set forward with the lots. And it gives you a feel for some of the depth of those lots. That's the exhibit, apologize here. It's exhibit L2.00. But to answer your question, so lots 23 through 30, there will be, the developer is not going to be, the applicant is not going to be programming lots, or rather, excuse me, buildings, the houses that will not accommodate patios because of the depth. So there are some building designs that would be, that potentially could have an impact on somebody's ability to have a patio space in the rear. So we are looking at limiting within that space, you know, planning appropriately the type of buildings that could accommodate patios, because it is the intention for every single one of those lots to have the ability to have a patio space. We are not looking to restrict that with any of these designs. So
So to that end, thank you. So to that end, the goal, and maybe this needs to be stipulated in the text, that the layout of the houses will make it so that every homeowner could have a patio of certain size. Is that maybe, I don't know if that's stipulated in the conditions. It wasn't quite clear, but that would be great. So that would be great. I had a couple more questions, if that's all right. I noticed a fence height stipulated. Where would there be fences in this?
Let's see here. I apologize. I'm on my laptop here, so I'm going back and forth to make sure I'm quoting these things out of the development text correctly. We had provided fencing.
Todd, on the last page.
Yeah, Jack, why don't you want to take that real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Jack Reynolds, our counsel for the project, everyone.
Good evening, council members. Jack Reynolds. All we're providing for is fencing around the patios themselves. There will be no perimeter fencing around the lots themselves. And as we discussed at the Planning Commission, they asked that we reduce the height of those fences to 4 feet in height, and they could be no farther away from the deck or the patio than 3 feet. So the fencing is only around the patio space itself to give a little bit of privacy.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know that I've seen that much before. Is that, and maybe this is a staff question, is that something we've seen in and around Dublin? I guess that's a staff question.
Yes, that's a great question. To my knowledge, I believe we had that with the Hamlet was something, and Tammy Noble may be able to answer this better than I would, as she has more experience with these.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Yes, Kathy, we've done that very typically with smaller lots, just to provide some small amount of privacy for the homeowners.
Okay.
Yeah, you've seen that in Weatherstone, but Weatherstone also allows enough, their patio homes, but they do allow enough green space to augment that 4-foot fence. So if you really, really wanted privacy, you could still work plantings in along the fence. So I don't know how this is all going to shake out till we sort of see what the applicant's going to sort of give us a site plan showing us a potential patio behind each one of these units, and about, you know, whether it's a 10-foot by 10-foot or 16 by 16, or, you know, however big the person really, you know, thinks they could build it. So that gives you a much better idea of the potential future privacy that one might have in this situation.
Tammy, do we have what the approved material of said fencing is? Is it a board-on-board fence? Is it what is the material that's permitted?
I hate to do this, but I might have to defer back to Zach.
So the fencing would then revert back to what the requirements are of the zoning code. So they don't specify any specific material in the code for their fencing. Then it would defer to zoning code.
So they could all be different materials.
As of right now, yes. Whether that's the intent from Jack and Todd, I would refer to them to answer that, though.
I believe the way we have it in the text right now, we do not stipulate that it needs to be one style or one type. We do. It is an open, for lack of a better term, an open-ended design. And I do think, you know, as we look at that L 2.0 exhibit, you know, I think for the most part, you know, lots 1 through 15 all the way to 22 really are going to promote what I would call kind of a traditional patio experience. There are a few lots where it's a little tighter. We have the stormwater easement that's in the back of the lot that we have to work with. And so that will dictate, depending upon the final programming of the lot, the size of the patio that could be done there. But in most instances, we'll be able to accommodate, you know, smaller trees or things, or planting beds along the property lines, you know, to provide that screening. And then, you know, the same thing with lots 23 through 30. Depending upon that final programming, the patio spaces are really going to, I'll use the term design themselves, but they're going to be very specific in shape and orientation, responding to the design of the buildings that will be placed there.
Todd, it looks like you have a fairly common architecture from the couple images we saw shown. I think it may behoove you, and I think council may be heading this direction too, that the fencing be uniform. I think it'd be sort of horrific if, somebody's changing up the fencing. At least they'd have to be painted out in the colors that are appropriate for the subdivision. So if the houses are, I you have to look back at your units, whether they're off gray or whatever, or off white, but the fencing sort of matches the units. And so that, when you're planning this thing out, that it all looks somewhat uniform, because somebody could go to Lowe's and buy some plastic fencing, and another guy has brown, and another guy has white, and it'll really trash up the entire subdivision. So I would think, in an architectural sense, you'd want to sort of keep the fencing all similar for the whole subdivision. Just a suggestion.
Evening.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I think that's something we could definitely look at closer and be prepared to maybe comment on. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you pick a fencing style that's, sort of neat, that matches what you're doing architecturally, I think it's going to really benefit the whole subdivision.
Good evening. If I could speak, can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay. Courtney Mitchell, I am the applicant. As far as the fence, we're happy to work with that, put it in the deeded restrictions, 100%. And we agree with you as far as it being uniform. We want that look also.
Thank you.
Okay, Jane, did you have a question?
No, I was going to mention that that in planning and zoning, I think we would have addressed that, because we had the same question come up at the Hamlet. We gave them 3 options with architectural material that matched or had a cohesive look with the architecture of the home. So I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad to hear that they'd be able to be amicable to do that. So I think it's a good idea.
Other questions, comments from council? I had a couple items. So some of your lots are 64 feet wide, and you indicated that every house would have the opportunity to have a 3-car garage. Now you have 6 feet of between the homes to the, or 6 foot to the lot line of the build zone. But I believe that you have a minimum of 14 feet home to home. So if I take the 64 feet and I put in an 18-foot residential garage door and an 8-foot 3rd-car garage door, that gives me 26 feet plus the 2 feet in the middle. That gets you to 28 feet. You're only allowed to have 50% of the front elevation to be taken up by garage space. So mathematically, how are you going to do 3-car garages on a 64-foot lot?
Jack, do you want to comment from the text perspective, how we were looking at that?
I'm here. We did provide the text that the garage door opening widths may make up 50% of the linear distance of the front elevation.
Well, I think it's typical in Dublin. It's not just the opening, it's the garage bank making up 50%. So I don't know that you can take the 2 feet out of that middle between the 2-car garage and the 1-car garage and not call that garage frontage. Because it is part of the garage frontage. I mean, it's the trim of the garage door.
Obviously, we want to provide the ability to provide 3-car garages for all of the units. So why don't we look at that to make sure that we are providing the correct percentage for the frontage of the garage.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that'll be important for the Planning Commission. I would also like to ask if there's been contemplation on where the HVAC units, when we line up lots, particularly 23 through 30, we kind of are creating bowling alleys as vistas coming in what you have now named as Lockroy Drive, the road coming off of Shire Rings. I don't think it would be appropriate to mount or to place the HVAC units between buildings of lots 23 through 30. They need to probably be mounted on the rear, or those bowling alley vistas are going to become very cluttered and unsightly. Also, with this, when you go to Planning Commission, I think that it would be good to have your outdoor spaces for those same lots laid out. If I hear you correctly, that is part of your stormwater management drainage area. And I don't know, on the particular drawings that we received, you said it can encroach 10 foot into the setback. I don't know what the distance is, let's say on lot 24, where 10 feet gets you to continue that stormwater management drainage before you get into that. So we also want to leave some room for plantings in those to give, some sense of privacy patio to patio. So I think those details probably need to be worked out on, particularly on lots 23 to 26. I wanted to make sure that when you talk about your building materials, brick is listed, and I wanted to make sure that that was full depth brick and that wasn't thin brick.
Check here and see. Yeah, we have not specified.
No brick. No brick.
Okay.
Okay, well, whatever you take to the Planning Commission in terms of your, those documentations, I think it'll be important that whatever brick there is. Now, one other thing that we've been seeing a lot of is the treatment. I don't know if these are going to be block walls or poured wall foundations, but to verify that either the exterior siding will come down to just above grade to hide the foundation, or if the foundation will receive some other treatment so we don't have essentially exposed basements, particularly on these lots that are going to have more significant grade changes on them. That'll be important for the Planning Commission. And then the last thing I think is important for us to talk about briefly is this pond maintenance concept. I know that council, we have had multiple conversations about this. We've referred it to CSAC. Again, we're going to have, you have 30 lots in the development and you have 2 ponds, which make up nearly, I think it's probably 1.5 acres roughly of pond between those 2. So I would like to take the temperature of my fellow council members and see what the thoughts are on that, but I see that Paul has turned his camera back on, which tells me that he would like to share something with us.
Well, I just want to clarify, and I think maybe not, it didn't come across clearly, that they are going to be, maintained by the city of Dublin. These 2 wet basins is the plan. I think initially when John Reiner asked this question, it sounded like the HOA was going to maintain these basins. But it will be the city of Dublin's responsibility.
Okay, any thoughts from council on that?
We've had several discussions on this. I think one of the challenges for folks that are listening in is, these can be quite costly. And as Councilman Reiner mentioned earlier, over time, sometimes the HOAs are not funded to be able to support the maintenance of this effectively over time. When they're very large subdivisions from a taxpayer supporting basis, you can see that this begins to make sense. The question that council, I think, has wrestled with is when they're smaller divisions like this one, there's 2 ponds for a small number of homes, who should bear the funding for this over time? And I know it went back and forth to our CSAC group. To me, I think one of the challenges, frankly, is to ask the taxpayers to pay for this funding. I think it becomes a challenge. I do wonder, in thinking about this, if we wouldn't perhaps somehow think about creating a contribution from the HOA to the maintenance of the ponds, maybe not fully, but at least partially. And so I think it's an outstanding issue when the subdivisions are as small as these are.
I would say particularly because at least in the drawings, it indicates that there'll be fountains in each of these ponds, which become very costly to maintain these fountains, pulling them and putting them in, and the aerator, the turbine, all of these kinds of things that, fountains are tremendously expensive to maintain.
An interesting aspect that too, Catherine, and Chris, is the power source that keeps the fountain running all the time. How's that to be handled? Who's paying for it? I'm one of these people that think that when you're planning this, that the city really doesn't rush in and take over the maintenance of all these ponds. I think they're lovely amenities, and I do encourage them in these subdivisions. But there's some other details that have to be covered, and that is the annual cost of electricity, because you do want the water features running most of the time for obvious reasons. So yeah, I agree with you, Kathy, on this too, that there should be some contribution. I don't think the taxpayer should pick up the money for every pond that we have in Dublin that gets put in here. I just think that's wrong. I think that has to be built into the costs of the homeowners association.
And
Thank you.
So I think I've brought this up every single time a development has come in front of us since I've been on council, and that is the timing of creating some type of a pro forma when it comes to the HOA, because we don't require that early on enough in the game to kind of do what you're talking about, which is to say, here's how this HOA is going to remain economically viable over time, including whatever they're going to include in it, which might include some type of an assessment for pond maintenance. Because I agree, I think it's a real challenge for us to ask the entire rest of the city to maintain ponds for effectively 30 homes. So that's always been a struggle for me. I think that because we've seen time and time again HOAs who really didn't think through their pro forma early on enough in the game, and then they come back to council and they're like, we can't afford to do this, like we need help. And that's something that I think we don't really want to see happen either. So that would be my struggle with that.
Is it possible to get an estimated number? I mean, so we know what we're talking about, an estimated between the next, before the next council meeting, and an idea of what they're expecting to spread across the rest of the city?
Yeah, as far as how much the ponds cost to maintain? Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that, I should staff speak for themselves, but they've brought us numbers in the past.
Jane, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I think that all of these, we've never really settled on how to do this, but from my understanding is that staff really wants, because it's part of the city's, water and rainwater retention and all that sort of thing, that they don't want to just leave it to an HOA to do because they have to maintain a quality. That's just what the city is responsible for. But I also know that if we're going to maintain these ponds, I agree that I think that there should be a contribution by the HOA, and I think that should be in the pro forma. I point directly to, places like the concerns we have at the Golf Club of Dublin. If you let, ponds can be so difficult to maintain because of weather conditions, and sometimes they become so difficult that no matter what you do, you can't get them cleaned up. So I like the idea that the city is responsible for their stormwater quality, but I do think that there should be some skin in the game here, because it is a neighborhood amenity, and we are asking our developers to utilize these ponds to become an active amenity with gazebos and sitting areas around them. So they get a direct benefit because they live in the neighborhoods of these ponds, which justifies them putting a little bit of money towards their maintenance, I believe.
Yeah,
and it's more complicated than that, actually, because when you have a pond, you're going to you have to first of all get the drainage correct so that the elevation of the pond water is always constant, and with that you can sort of probably bring sod up to the edge of the pond. But that has to be proved in the process of the planning part of this. Now, if that doesn't occur, you have to come up with another game plan where the sides of the pond is treated with a certain amount of decorative river wash gravel or something, because the pond's elevation will go up and down depending on whether it's summer, spring, or fall. And I think if you're going to allow retention, detention, well, or basins in your city, somebody has to come in there that actually knows what they're doing, that has the math for this, that allows this pond not to become stagnant, not to become a weed field for the top 3 feet, and the water goes back down. So you have to know the elevation of the water and know that that's continuous all year round to make this something of aesthetic value. So you have to get a little deeper in the weeds when you're talking about these kind of ponds and understand, hey, you know, if we're going to have a change of elevation, this thing is only draining 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 acres. It's the water depth is going to change, and it's going to be rather unsightly for a big part of the year. So I think that's really important when we're thinking about this.
Well, I think it's also important to understand what the expectations are. Frequently, the expectation of a city-maintained pond might be different than the expectation of an HOA-maintained pond. And obviously, if these ponds are going to have fountains in them and things like that, the expectation is that they're going to be very aesthetic, so that their primary function is aesthetic. Their secondary function really is stormwater management. And, you know, I know that we get in difficult places when we don't manage these expectations. And I don't feel that, you know, just saying the city's going to manage these ponds, you know, maybe we manage a portion of the pond. Maybe we manage the sediment control, or we manage, you know, the functionality of the pond and not the aesthetics of the pond. So maybe every, you know, 25 years or so, there might have to be some dredging expenses or something like that, that you know, the city might have to participate in. But in terms of just I've never been in favor of the city maintaining ponds, particularly on these very small developments. You know, this pond that's would be the easternmost pond, I believe that is. You know, you're talking about a benefit really to a handful of lots, and a burden to a city. So that's my piece. I don't know where the rest of everyone feels, but that's why I wanted to bring up these ponds. Other comments? Yeah, Andy.
I would just say, you know, this conversation seems to me to be much bigger than this specific case. Clearly, this is a conversation we've been having for the last year or before my time, and it is problematic. It keeps coming up, and Chris, you make good points that there's a big difference between the utilitarian use of a pond and the aesthetic use of the pond, and the folks that buy homes in these neighborhoods don't necessarily understand that difference, or that hasn't been pointed out to them. But unfortunately, this particular applicant is kind of caught in the middle of this discussion, and it's a discussion that, you know, it seems to me should be had before any further development causes more of a burden on either the city or the HOAs. As Paul indicated, the way it stands now, it's not the HOA's responsibility, so it would be on the city. And as Kathy pointed out, that's a burden on the taxpayers for just a very small development where you've got 2 retention ponds. So I'm kind of in a pickle because we've got maybe 2 weeks before we hear this case again, and unless those ponds disappear, we're going to have a very difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, and I would remind you that we did refer this to CSAC. They came up with the pond maintenance program, and then we referred back to them how to pay for it. And they came back with, it should be funded by the city. So that was the recommendation we received from CSAC. And I don't know that we accepted that recommendation. We accepted their report, but I do not believe we accepted the recommendation.
And Andy, as a bit of background, it's sort of a mixed bag, if you will, that there are subdivisions where it's fully in the HOA and there's others there that are not. So there certainly is a precedent to say the HOA fully takes care of stormwater in the city. And as a matter of fact, I think Paul's here to maybe remind us, but I think, is it 50-50, Paul, or something? I mean, it's a pretty even split between, you know, where we are today and that. Is that correct?
Yeah, roughly. The focus of CSAC during their discussions were 46 basins that are in city-owned reserves yet maintained by the HOAs. That was really kind of the point of contention. And does the city take over the maintenance of those particular basins? But there's, almost 200 basins, citywide, of various maintenance, because some are on commercial property or with commercial developments that obviously we're not maintaining at all, that are privately maintained.
Now, these would fall in that first category, right? As I understand it, that this is dedicated green space to the city of Dublin. The turf and plant beds and things that surround it will be maintained by the HOA, but the pond itself would fall to the maintenance of the city. So these would fall in that first category of the 40 some odd ponds that CSAC focused on.
Absolutely. And, our current practice has been to, in city-owned reserve areas, that the city will maintain those basins. And really, when we say basin, we mean from the water edge in. From the water edge out, yes, the HOA then maintains that common area, the turf areas themselves. But again, what we reported to council back almost a year ago, actually just over a year ago, as part of the CSAC evaluation, is it has been on a case-by-case basis. But again, our recent practice has been for the city to maintain these basins in city-owned reserves.
I have a question for you, Paul. When a project comes in with a pond system, does the engineering department take a good look at this to see what it's draining? Will it stay full? Analyze the entire integrity of the pond for its life, and of course, they're going to throw the physical attributes of a fountain out there to make it more attractive. Will this pond stay full? And I think it's really important because, and to the life of the pond, whether it's going to be a real attraction or whether it's going to dry down in the summer. So I think anytime a pond comes in, since you're civil engineers, that we should be analyzing these ponds to see how full they're going to stay and how functional they really are as an aesthetic improvement. Do we do that?
Yeah, understood. I mean, we do as an overview. Pond construction, is kind of fairly typical as far as the excavation, the clay liner inside to, keep it from leaking. But it's kind of hard in terms of the water maintenance itself in a wet basin. Certainly you have evaporation. Some developments use them for irrigation purposes. And in order to maintain that water level, some of them have well fed as a result to keep that water level up. So there's a whole host of different circumstances. We traditionally haven't had a difficulty on wet basins to keep them full. It's fairly rare that we have them that they dry out, so to speak. Just because of our, I guess, the 40 to 50 inches of rain we get a year. But we do take a look at, the depth of the pond itself for the pond health, and then certainly the stormwater management component of the pond design as well.
Paul, can you speak to?
Be very important, because you'd also want to, if you don't think it's got enough drainage, and it's not draining enough of the area, that you probably would want to then say this pond should be augmented with a well system to keep it full. Somebody has to make some rational decisions when it comes to pond management like this.
I think Dana had something he'd like to chime in on. Dana?
Paul, can you speak to stormwater regulations? I mean, there are state regulations that must be followed. We have a set of regulations as well. And certainly we do closely monitor the design of the stormwater system in terms of its retention or detention and how it affects things downstream. I know that our staff does pretty significant analysis of that. The other issues that Councilmember Reiner referring to reference maintenance. We've had maintenance issues the 30 years I've been here in various, neighborhoods. A lot of that sometimes is because these stormwater basins can get silt in them. They can build, then they don't function the way they're originally designed to. So there's maintenance issues. Right. And those maintenance issues need to be kept up to ensure that the stormwater system, which those regulations require us to keep pace with, are all functioning together. And Paul, can you comment on that?
Yeah, and Dana raises a good point that with our general NPDES stormwater permit with the Ohio EPA, we have to have a quality component within our code, which we do, which is consistent with the EPA requirements. It is probably, most council members know, we were on the cutting edge of that back in the late 90s. We were one of the first communities to incorporate a water quality component in our code before it was required by the EPA. But now it is required by the EPA. So we have extended detention in order to allow impurities to settle out of the water. So there's kind of multiple stages in the outlet control structure, because for the first 48 to 72 hours, depending on the drainage area, you have to, detain the water and release it more slowly, again, for that quality component. Dana raises a good point that obviously the pond maintenance and health is a critical portion of the stormwater quality itself. As much as sometimes vegetation is unattractive, like cattails, it is a good water purifier. So that's a plus. Obviously, siltation and sedimentation that reduces pond capacity and reduces depth does not work in our favor. Usually we then, obviously, as fertilizers enters the basin with that shallow depth, we end up with a lot of algae and water quality issues as a result of lack of pond depth. But our primary purpose in the stormwater management component, consistent again with the EPA requirements, is that quality component to maintain good stormwater quality, and then secondarily to regulate the release of and the release rate of the stormwater to prevent downstream erosion. And to your point, John, yeah, we look at the amount of area draining into a basin, because you're right, there has to be a balance there. You can't have a large basin that only is fed by 2 catch basins, for instance. That's not going to work.
Well, Paul, I do want to move on with this. I want to get Jennifer Radler clarification on the ordinance for the rezoning. These are details that certainly the Planning Commission and staff will have to continue to work out in terms of the pond, its depth, will it have fountains in it, and dividing up those responsibilities within those ponds if they were to have fountains and so on and so forth. And Jennifer, I just wanted to verify that moving on from this ordinance doesn't set the rest of these things in stone. It only is for the rezoning portion.
Right, and I do think though that if council wants to be specific about any of the discussion we talked about with responsibility, that does need to make it into the text. So that would need to be addressed at the second reading. But all of the details with final development plan, there'll be a whole new application which goes just to Planning Commission after the zoning set.
Okay. Well, I think that staff probably has gotten some indication of what our concerns are. And I think Greg raises a good point of understanding a cost analysis of this in the long term, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years into the future, would be very helpful for us to make the decision relative to this specific applicant. I think that we have some work to do prior to second reading, but I do also feel confident that staff and the applicant understand the issues raised by council.
Yes, we do. We will look at the patio discussion that you've had this evening about fencing and materials, et cetera, and the stairs. So that can be addressed in the text. We'll look at the garage door width, and then we'll work with staff to try to understand some of the costs and maintenance for the pond and see if we cannot address that as a part of the text on maintenance costs, along with possibly the electrical costs, et cetera. So yes, we will work with staff in the next week and a half to get that addressed for your meeting in 2 weeks.
Great. Really appreciate that, Mr. Reynolds. Okay. Other comments by council before we move on? Okay, well, we will look forward to second reading public hearing on ordinance 02-21 on February the 22nd. Okay, ordinance 03-21.
Amending zoning code sections 153.002, 153.158 through 153.160, 153.162 through 153.163, 153.165 through 153.166, 153.170 through 153.178, and appendices F and G to address the Architectural Review Board development requirement and procedures in historic Dublin boundary.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Great. Our staff report this evening will be from Nikki Martin and Greg Dale. I see Nikki there, so please.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Before you this evening are two ordinances which we will be presenting together. Tonight, I do have Greg Dale, our consultant with McBride Dale Clarion with us, as well as the chair of the Architecture Review Board, Kathleen Bryan. So a bit of background, the proposal before you this evening for introduction is part of a multi-year public engagement process, which included a stakeholder committee, various public meetings, as well as board and commission review, which in total represent 19 public forums over those multiple years. Ordinance 321 is for zoning code amendments, which include modifications to the historic district boundary, as well as the addition of city-owned historic outlying parcel properties to Appendix G, as well as modifications to the development standards for the Architecture Review Board Code. Ordinance 4-21 is for the rezoning of properties from the Bridge Street District to the Historic District to remove all properties from the Bridge Street District. Additionally, the Historic Dublin Design Guidelines are a companion document that have run concurrent with this process and will be before Council as a resolution in March. The resolution is proposed to align with the effective date of these ordinances, should Council choose to approve them. The first piece of this is the modification to the historic Dublin boundary. In accordance with the direction provided by Council, both staff, the Architecture Review Board, and the Planning and Zoning Commission are recommending the modifications shown on the screen to shift the eastern boundary of historic Dublin to the east side of the Scioto River, to shift the western boundary of historic Dublin to be coterminous with the Dublin City Schools property and incorporate Indian Run. And additionally, the removal of Bridge Park West, buildings Z1, Z2, the West Plaza, CML Dublin branch, as well as the Dublin parking garage. With this, I will turn it over to our consultant, Greg Dale, to discuss the details of the zoning code amendment.
Thank you, Nikki. Mayor, members of council, what I'd like to do is just give an overview of the historic district, some 90 pages here. And what I propose to do is to talk about it in 5 different categories, and then we can delve into those in any more detail that you would like. I would just reiterate what Nikki was saying about the extensive nature of the process that was followed here. Anybody who waded through the some almost 400 pages of legislative history that was part of your packet saw the extensive meetings of a number of different entities, including public meetings, but in particular, the Architectural Review Board had multiple meetings where we went through these regulations in great detail. In a couple of meetings, literally on a page-by-page basis, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission also went through a detailed review as well. So this has really gone through the process. So the document that you have in front of you, the 90-page chapter, has a couple of major elements to it. The purpose and applicability are in some ways pro forma chapters or sections, but I do think that the purpose is worth dwelling on just a little bit, because I think it does frame up what all of the boards and commissions worked so hard to do, and that was to have a set of regulations that both protect the historic resources and historic character of the district, while also allowing for compatible and sensitive
development and infill opportunities. So that balance was always something that I think we worked hard to achieve. I mean, overall, I would characterize this as a strengthening and tightening of the regulations, and in particular, a strengthening and tightening of the relationship between the regulations you have in front of you and the design guidelines that will be coming behind shortly. So that purpose is important to keep in mind. Then you have the section that's basically the use regulations, and those are, you know, fairly traditional zoning language in terms of permitted uses and conditional uses. There are also, we spent a fair amount of time looking at what we would call the use-specific standards, and that is standards that are unique to certain kinds of uses like bed and breakfast and outdoor dining and those sorts of things, where there are some customized standards that apply. Then you have the development standards, and that by far is the biggest piece of what you have in front of you, and they're really in a couple of different categories. The first of those are the essentially the dimensional standards, and we probably spent more time on what I think Nikki earlier in a conversation referred to as right-sizing these standards, and that is trying to get the right relationship of things like lot width and lot size and height and maximum lot coverage and maximum building footprint. I think the ARB probably spent more time on that. Staff did a study that looked at those conditions. There was a lot of community input in that, and worked very hard on those, and I think got to a point that we think is kind of the, you know, the sweet spot of the standards that make most sense to make sure that new development, particularly residential development in residential neighborhoods in the district, will be within, will be compatible with and in scale with the surrounding area. Then there's a whole section in there on kind of the pretty straightforward development, like parking, stormwater management, landscaping, fencing, lighting, signs. That's actually the largest section. It's about 40 pages in there. And that was generally carried forward from the Bridge Street district. There were a few changes, but by and large, those substantive standards for those things that I just mentioned are relatively unchanged from pulling them from the Bridge Street district, because those seem to make sense. Then there are some design standards in these as well that we worked very hard with the ARB to dovetail with the design guidelines that will be coming later. Keeping in mind what we're talking about now are regulations, the law, the design guidelines that you'll see, but you would adopt or approve as part of a resolution, not an ordinance, are essentially policy documents, guidelines that go with these. And we spent a lot of time working with the ARB and the Planning and Zoning Commission to make sure those fit together. Then there's a whole series of process-related things. Those are things like the ARB duties and responsibilities, the procedures that are followed in the review. But in particular, one thing we spent a lot of time looking at and working on is strengthening the demolition regulations. And in particular, the ability of the ARB to require documentation to demonstrate economic hardship. Council may be aware that for what are known as contributing buildings in the district, if somebody wants to demolish that building, they have to demonstrate an economic hardship. But in the previous regulations, it was not quite as well defined as to what that meant. And so we tried to flesh out what kind of documentation the ARB can require for applicants to demonstrate that economic hardship. And then finally, there were a series of definition changes that were made that aren't actually in this chapter, but they're in the overall chapter for the code for definitions that cleaned up some things that we needed to have for things like cultural resources and some other things that just needed to be defined based upon the changes that were made. So that's an overview. Nikki and I are happy to try to answer any questions at this point.
Great, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate that. I want to take a minute and check in with the clerk's office to see if we've had public comment submitted regarding this application.
No comments received.
And Sue, have we received any through the web chat this evening?
No comments.
Okay, okay, council, questions, discussion? Yeah, Jane.
I just have one question when I read through it once again, and it is lengthy. there was, Nikki, maybe you could tell me, there was a question about a permitted use in the historic district having to do with entertainment. And it wasn't a permitted use. And I wondered, and I couldn't find a definition for entertainment or indoor recreation. Could you explain that to me? That's the only thing I was kind of curious about.
Yeah, definitely. So the use category that you're speaking of is indoor recreation and entertainment. We do in the overall zoning code permit that in other districts as well as the Bridge Street district. The general intent of that is to provide opportunities for indoor gyms, indoor swimming, you know, things that usually take place in a larger format context. So you're talking about tenant spaces that are about 20,000 square feet in size. Obviously, given the intimate nature of historic Dublin, it did not seem feasible that there would be a space that would accommodate that type of recreation. And with the adjacency to the Bridge Street district, those opportunities would not be far away and better suited elsewhere.
Okay, so that makes perfect sense. I just wonder if there is a way that we could be a little bit more specific, because in the historic district, when I think of entertainment, I think of Tucci's having outdoor music, the areas having outdoor entertainment and opportunities, and the word entertainment wasn't defined. So I want to be sure that people don't feel as if you can't have entertainment in the district, which I'm sure was never the intent. But it certainly was a little vague when I saw just the word entertainment not being permitted. Can we play with that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. We can look into the use specific standards for restaurant.
Okay.
So,
well,
so the other thing I would,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilman.
No, that's all right. I was just going to say that because even not just the restaurants, but frequently we have entertainment on the street for a variety of reasons, and I just want to be sure that it's not a definition that someone doesn't understand.
Yeah,
and we can certainly we can beef up that definition, or we can provide a definition. But for council's information, I'd point out that use is only permitted as a conditional use in the public sub-district, and the special use regulations provide that it has to be operated by either a public or nonprofit organization, which would even further narrow down that possibility of anything happening.
Okay, I think it's just the word entertainment that
Right.
It's such a broad word, and when you say it's not permitted, I think it can be misconstrued. That's okay.
We can do that.
Thanks.
Maybe some conditional use, you know, we may see development down there that we don't expect to have seen yet, and perhaps a conditional use might be appropriate rather than making it not be permitted. You know, to have a pathway, I would be in favor. Jane brings up a good point. I would be in favor of a conditional use sort of thing for, you know, something that might develop that we've not seen before. Other questions from council? Comments? I know I really, I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the enormous amount of work and the amount of time from the commissions, from our consultants, from the staff, from everyone, because this is an enormous amount of work. And the amount of, and I'm going to use the word love because that's the right word, the amount of love that was given to making sure that this was really reviewed and really discussed is so important going forward. And I think it's a tremendous amount of work. I look forward to looking at the guidelines as well, the companion piece of that next month. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate everybody's work. I think this is a very important step forward. So thank you.
Yeah, do appreciate. I see Kathy Bryan there. Just please pass along to all of your ARB members and to the general public how much we appreciate the work that they put in on this. And I know for me, I'm very thankful that we were able to carve out some of the new development out of the historic district, so you don't have to keep seeing those materials as reference to what somebody else wants to do in the historic district and have to continue to fight that battle on a nightly basis. So we certainly appreciate that. We'll look forward to second reading, public hearing on this on February 22nd. Looks like there's a little bit of work to do with the entertainment piece that Jane mentioned. And certainly we can tackle this on that evening, I feel confident. Thanks for joining us, Kathy. Thanks for all you do, and pass our appreciation on to boards and commissions. Okay, introduction, public hearing, vote resolution, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Back up, ordinance 0421.
Rezoning of 16 parcels from Bridge Street District Public to Historic Public, 5 parcels from Bridge Street District Historic Transition Neighborhood to Historic Public, 51 parcels from Bridge Street District Historic Core to Historic Core, 24 parcels from Bridge Street District Historic South to Historic South, 57 parcels from Bridge Street District Historic Residential to Historic Residential, and 6 parcels from Bridge Street District Historic Core to Historic Residential.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. And I know that City Manager Dana McDaniel would like to make a comment before we get started on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I just wanted to state for the record that my wife and I own a home at 73 South Riverview Street, parcel number 273-00013. And this property is one of many being considered for rezoning in this legislation. My wife, Lisa Pat McDaniel, and I have not participated in any process relative to this rezoning, nor have I been involved in the formulation of any recommendations. So in effect, I've recused myself from any involvement in this process, other than ministerial acts for which I'm responsible. I did send an email to City Council as well as the City Clerk of Council's office for the record on this matter. And unless you have any questions, that's all I have. I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Dana. Okay, Christina has introduced, and our staff report this evening will be from Zach Hounshell, I believe, but I did see Nikki show up there, so I'm not entirely certain who we're going to have. Is it you, Zach, or is it you, Nikki?
It'll be a presentation from Zach this evening. I was just prepared to speak to the historic district rezoning. My apologies.
Great, appreciate it. All right, Zach, go ahead, take it away, buddy.
Nikki, I do not have this presentation. I was not.
Okay. So good evening. This is a request for, I'm sorry, what was this, Zach?
Ordinance 4-21 rezoning 16 part. It's a rezoning of I don't know, if I did quick math in my head, maybe 120 parcels in the historic district.
Oh, my apologies. So this was a concurrent consideration with our previous application. So this is my case. And it was part of the previous presentation, but this is a request for consideration of a rezoning on February 22nd for 159 parcels, and it is really intended to be a rezoning in name only. So the Bridge Street districts would be transferred to historic districts, with the exception that the properties proposed to be excluded from historic Dublin would remain Bridge Street District Historic Transition, and however be under the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. With that, the Architectural Review Board did make a recommendation, which the Planning and Zoning Commission carried forward, that 6 residential properties on North Riverview Street be rezoned from historic core to historic residential, consistent with the existing development character of the area. Additionally, with the extension of the boundary of historic Dublin to the west, the Dublin City Schools parcel, as well as Indian Run, will be wholly within the historic district public zoning district. With that, I am happy to answer any questions, and sincere apologies for the confusion this evening.
It's all good. These are interesting times for all of us. If we were all in the same room together, it'd be a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? Okay, I want to check in with Sue in the Public Information Office to see if we've received public comment.
We have not.
Okay, thank you. And Jenny in the Clerk's Office?
No comments.
Appreciate that. Okay, council questions, discussion. This one's a little bit more.
Nikki, I have a question. the historic core versus historic residential, those 6 parcels, what's the difference?
Yeah, so there are quite a bit of differences. The primary difference includes that these parcels would go from commercial zoning designations to historic residential zoning designations, which significantly limits the type of development as well as the intensity of development. This consideration by council would obviously be in conjunction with the anticipated purchase of those parcels by the city.
Good. Thank you.
Other questions from fellow council members?
Nikki, I had a quick question. I just would like to confirm that these changes do not make any property in non-conformance with the new zoning, right? That you mentioned earlier in your comment that it was in name only, but I just want to, I guess, confirm that this wouldn't, from a property owner perspective, create any sort of a non-conformity for anybody listed on this list of properties. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Oh, Jane, yes.
No, I think it's really notable. We haven't really gotten much public response because I think the effort that the community has put into this over the last year, that I think we've finally come to a place where we have gotten so much community input, so much study on this, that everybody has a comfort level with it. So I'm really pleased, and I just want to thank the staff and the ARB and the planning and zoning and everybody who worked on this, because this was a yeoman's effort, and I think they've done a really good job of helping us find a way to make sure that the historic area is preserved and maintained in the way the community wants. So I appreciate all the effort on that.
Great. Okay, well, we will have second reading, public hearing on February 22nd on this one as well. Looks like that will be an easier effort there. Okay, introduction, public hearing, vote, resolution 03-21.
Authorizing the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Franklin County Commissioners for the administration of wireless 911 government assistance funds.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. And we have our own Jay Somerville. I saw him appear. Good evening, Mr. Somerville. Welcome. And we look forward to your staff report.
Good evening, members of council. Good to see each and every one of you. Resolution 03-21 authorizes the city manager to enter into what has become a yearly intergovernmental agreement with the Franklin County Commissioners for the purpose of distribution of wireless 911 government assistance funds. This fund comes to the county from the state based upon a 25-cent per month charge on all wireless devices that access 911. Once the funds come to the County 911 Planning Committee establishes a budget, which was included in your packet, and sets the amounts that go towards funding 911 in Franklin County, including money that comes back to the public safety answering points, the 4 public safety answering points that receive wireless call funding. Dublin is one of those 4. One of only 3 that is funded every year. The 4th rotates between 2 other communities. And our funding has been fixed at $130,000 since 2013, when the state locked in the amount of funding that comes back to the counties to ensure the fund remains solvent until new legislation can be brought on expanding the surcharge on 911 to include all devices that access 911. But tonight we're asking that you pass the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into the agreement, and to be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thanks, Jay. I'm going to take a moment. Sue, have we received any public comment via the web chat?
We've not.
Great, thank you. And Jenny, have we received any through the clerk's office?
We have not.
Appreciate that. Council questions, discussion for Jay? Hearing none. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate the work. I know that's a lot of effort to put that all together.
Thank you.
Okay, resolution 04-21.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council regarding wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment for employees within the Communication Technician Bargaining Unit.
I'll introduce it.
Great, thank you. And there she is, Jennifer Miglietti will present the staff report this evening. How are you, Jennifer? Good to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As Jenny articulated, Resolution 4-21 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, the Ohio Labor Council. So the term of this agreement is 3 years from January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023, with the exception of 2 articles that are based on wages and insurance. The term of these 2 articles will expire at the end of this year, December 31st, and are set for bargaining again in the fall of 2021. Staff recommends that council approve Resolution 4-21, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. Sue, want to check in to see if you'd received any comment via the web?
We have not.
Great, thank you. And Jenny, have we received any via the clerk's office?
No comments.
Appreciate that. Council questions, discussion. Hearing none. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Great. I would thank you, Jennifer, but we're going to be spending some more time here together. Resolution 05-21.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with United Steelworkers of America regarding wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment for employees within the Maintenance Worker, Fleet Technician 1, Electrical Worker, and Custodial Worker bargaining units.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, Christina. And again, we have Jennifer to deliver our staff report. So please, Ms. Miglietti.
Again, good evening. So Resolution 521 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the United Steelworkers of America. The term of this agreement continues to be 3 years from September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2022, with the exception of Articles 22 on wages and Article 32 on insurance. The term of these 2 articles will expire again at the end of December 31st, 2021, and are set for bargaining again beginning in July of 2021. Staff recommends that council approve Resolution 5-21, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Sue, have we received any comments via the web?
We have not.
And Jenny, through the clerk's office?
We have not.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Council questions, discussion? Hearing none. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate all your hard work on that and working with our collective bargaining units. Resolution 06-21.
Authorizing the city manager to sign and submit an application and execute agreements associated with the application process to seek funding for parkland acquisition from the Ohio Public Works Commission's Clean Ohio Fund Green Space Conservation Program.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, Christina. And there he is, Mr. Ehrman himself, to present our staff report. Welcome, Matt. Take it away.
Good evening, members of council. This resolution before you this evening authorizes staff to apply for state funding through the Clean Ohio Fund Green Space Conservation Program, and authorizes the city manager to enter into any agreements relevant to the application process. If awarded, this grant will reimburse a portion of the city's costs for real estate purchases related to the recent passage of Ordinance 5420. You will recall these are 2 parcels located east of North Riverview Street in the Historic District along the west bank of the Cider River that will expand parkland to be part of Riverside Crossing Park. According to the park's master plan, this area will be managed primarily as a naturalized zone with passive recreation opportunities. The plan also includes public path systems, which will link contiguous park properties to the north and south boundaries that will also provide limited access to the river. As such, this acquisition is eligible for state funding through the Clean Ohio program. Acceptance of these funds requires that restrictions be deeded that relate to the continuous management of the property, which is consistent with the park's master plan. If awarded, the city could receive up to $93,887 for reimbursement for this acquisition. Staff has successfully submitted and presented the preliminary screener application, and the next step is to submit the final application, which requires adoption of this resolution. Therefore, staff recommends approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Sue, have we received any comments through the web chat?
We have not.
Great, thanks. And Jenny, through the clerk's office?
No, no comments.
Thank you. Council questions, discussion? I do know that Morpsey has started taking up the conversation relative to, I believe that they will be the distributor of these funds, and they have started to take up this conversation on these grants. So I'm sure we'll look forward to hearing back from them once we are fully submitted. Any other comments? Hearing none, Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes. Okay, under the other component of our agenda, we have a request to remove ordinance 4820, 4920, and 5020 from the table and scheduled for hearing on February the 22nd. I believe that Sarah O'Malley has turned her camera on, therefore she has a message to deliver to us. So Sarah.
Good evening, members of City Council. The building ownership for 600 Metro Place North requested the use of PACE financing assessments for a total of around $8.7 million for the retrofit and conversion of a former Crown Plaza Hotel into a DoubleTree Hotel by Hilton. As part of this process, the two resolutions were approved at the City Council meeting on November 16th of last year. The three ordinances were tabled at the request of the applicant at the second reading or public hearing on December 7th. And building ownership is now requesting to remove the table ordinances 4820, 4920, and 50-20 and schedule them for second reading and public hearing at the next council meeting on February 22nd in order to move forward with their PACE project. So we are recommending that we remove the ordinances from the table at tonight's meeting and schedule them for second reading public hearing on February 22nd. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I want to check in with the clerk's office. Did we receive any comments via the clerk's office?
No comments.
And through the web chat, Sue?
No, we have not.
Great, appreciate that. Council questions, discussion? Hearing none, I will make a motion to remove from the table and schedule for second reading public hearing for ordinance 4820, 4920, and 5020 on February the 22nd. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Andy. Jenny, would you please call a roll?
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to staff comments. I believe Dana has a few items for us this evening, and there he is.
Actually, thank you, Mayor. Just only one comment, unfortunately, a sad one. I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge and extend our condolences on the passing of Pat Monahan, the recently former mayor of Shawnee Hills. I know I got a message out to council yesterday. I didn't know if you all got to see it or not. Just want, again, extend our condolences to his family and to the residents of Shawnee Hills. I just think that the mayor, Pat, was just a great person to work with, a big personality, fun to be around, a veteran, with whom I had great respect for and was always active in our parades and everything. And we're going to really miss seeing him. So I just wanted to lift that up and pass that along. Unfortunately, that's all I have for this evening. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I know that was a courageous battle, and he will certainly be missed by that community and ours as well. So appreciate those thoughts. Council committee reports. Goodness, I don't have the committees listed here, so I'm going to have to, I will go down by individual. Christina, Finance.
Nothing this time. We have our first meeting scheduled on the 17th.
Okay, Kathy would have CODA.
Nothing to report on CODA this evening.
And then you would also have, no, you're no longer the 33, you're not on that one any longer. Any other for you?
I am. So
admin committee, I got it.
Okay, I'm on the 33 quarter. I still am. So we have a meeting on Friday, so I can say nothing there. Admin, I'll update us on that. I have just a couple things if I could. I sent a memo out to everyone this morning. I hope you got a chance to see that. Our next workshop on the Dublin 35 framework plan is next week. And staff has asked us if we could please to take a survey to help make that go a little more effective next Thursday night. So if you'd all take about 20 minutes, please, and take that survey by before the beginning of next week, that'd be much appreciated. So thank you on that, and thanks to staff. And then Chris and I, over the last, 2 weeks, have had an opportunity to have one-on-one sessions with every member of our boards and commissions. We started this process last year and continued it this year. Thanks to the group for doing that. One more meeting on their part, but what it did is allowed us to get an opportunity to spend some time understanding, what's working, what maybe we could do together to improve it, et cetera, so forth. So Chris and I are working up the summary of that, and we will get that to council and staff by our next meeting. And we have an admin committee meeting tomorrow. And in that, we will be talking a little bit about boards and commissions, because as I mentioned last time, we will need to make some appointments the first part of March. So thanks. That's my report for tonight.
Great, thanks, Kathy. John, we'll go to you, and I know you have the Arts Council.
Yes, tomorrow's your last chance to cut off for artifacts created at home, in which if you have a photograph or a painting or something that you want to send over to the Arts Council, they're going to have a show here in a couple of months. We're going to display your art. Hopefully, if it's jury, it will be juried and be allowed to be displayed. Then the student art program is going to run until February 28th. That is virtual, so you'll see that on your computer, and that checks out on the 28th of February. And that's about it for now. Thank you.
Great. I'll stick with you on the Veterans Committee.
Nothing new to report. We're still working on the Purple Heart program. And I think Paul pretty much did I want to thank the committee members, you, Chris, and Andy, for working on the waiver issue, because it was a lengthy thing, coming up with 4 items. And I think it was a well put together program for City Council. So again, thank you for that. I think Paul did a fairly extensive report already on that particular issue and what happened.
Great. Okay, that'll take me to Andy, the Logan Union Champaign.
Nothing to report.
And 33 corridor.
I haven't been to a meeting yet. I think it's next week, and I will miss the first meeting.
Okay. Greg, school board.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I had information from Dr. Hoadley here. I'm gonna read my notes to make sure I get it right, because it is all really important information, and in this world, any positive information is a breath of fresh air. So here we go. He said that they're continuing through hybrid learning. The local COVID data has really been improving steadily over the last 3 weeks. There is extremely little COVID spread within the schools. Teachers and students have all been very committed to the mask wearing and the other mitigation strategies. I guess tonight the Dublin Board of Education is discussing plans for returning to full move back in full-time in the schools learning. Last week, all the educators were provided the opportunity to be vaccinated, and they are all set to receive their second dose of vaccination between the dates of February 23rd and 27th. So I guess for the period right after that, from the 24th to the 26th, the entire system is going back to remote learning just for that brief period of time to make sure that people that get that second vaccine are still feeling well and able to resume normal duties, and give them a minute to catch their breath and get through that process. March 15th is the date where they are expecting to be fully returned to in-school learning in all grade levels. So by that date, all of the educators will be vaccinated and will have developed immunities. And they have begun to ask their principals to begin the planning process for this full return to in-school learning by the middle of March. So they're going to make all of the necessary adaptations to classrooms, operations, cleaning, distancing, making sure supplies are available and all of that. And I just want to commend Dr. Hoadley and the board for the efforts that they have put into this. From my own personal experience, my most contact comes from Mike Allring, the principal here at Kaufman, where my son is attending. And the amount of information has just been, it has been thorough, it has been consistent, it has been constant. He has Zoom meetings for each grade level for half an hour, just about every other week, for all the parents that want to get on and talk about any concerns or anything else. And for, you know, our schools sort of became the epicenter of how we're dealing with all of this. And I got to tell you, Dr. Hoadley and this education system and our school system has managed it as well as you possibly could. And now that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and we can feel fairly comfortable, it's not a train. We're going to get these kids back into the schools, get the teachers protected, and that is going to be such an important thing for our kids' mental health. For, I got to be honest with you, my mental health, get my kid out of the house. So it is really a really boost and a no pun intended shot in the arm, I think, for everybody to begin to have that normal, beginning to feel as though we can get back to something looking more like normal. So my congratulations and really deep appreciation to Dr. Hoadley and all the teachers and the educators and the administrators and, you know, all those bus drivers that I see out there and everybody else that goes into propping up that system. So it was good news from Dr. Hoadley, and I wish them the very best as they implement this new plan.
Great, thanks, Greg. I think that is a consistent message of the quality of communication that's been coming out of all the schools. I know for Jerome it is the same, and I am certain that for Scioto it is no different. So certainly appreciate all that information and thank them for navigating a tremendously difficult time. Jane, the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right. Planning and Zoning had, 3 cases I'll just tell you quickly about. Heartland Bank, which was turned down on cladding for its remodel, came back for reconsideration and was given that, and they will be returning with some new things for the Planning Commission to see, which is good news. Turkey Hill on the corner of Shire Rings and Avery came before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a conditional use. It was also approved, but I think it would be nice for you to hear that the architecture of that particular service station, which would include a indoor dining restaurant, a drive-through, a car wash, and I think it's a 10-bank gas station, was very, very high quality, and the commission was very appreciative to see that the materials were quite nice. We asked for additional connectivity with biking and walking. We're asking with that on every parcel wherever anybody wants to put a building anymore. We're trying to retrofit suburbia, but and they agreed to that, and the landscaping will be very nice. So I think you'll be pleased with the outcome of that. And then the third item was the Teller townhomes in the Bridge Park area. They came back for an informal review to just get some ideas on the direction of architecture, and the Planning and Zoning Commission had quite a number of things to recommend, and we'll be hopeful to see what comes back with that. And then we discussed the temporary sign code, which will be coming before council here shortly, I think. That's all.
Thanks, Jane. No, that's a ton of work. Appreciate you doing it.
Sure.
Okay, whose committee did I miss? Anybody?
Just bridges, if that's a committee.
Dublin Bridges, yep, go ahead, sorry.
The only reason I'll bring this up is because I think it's really important for council to know that the money, the CARES money that the city gave, which I think it was about $60,000, split between Bridges Welcome Warehouse and the Dublin Pantry, is already being used for rental assistance, mortgage payments, medical bills, and all the things that you had intended the CARES dollars to be given for. And they are putting it to good use, really good use. So we should all feel really good that we were able to provide them that, and that citizens here in the city are already enjoying the benefits of that. That's all.
Great, thank you. I'll give you a brief update on Morpsey. As I said, they're starting to receive some of the data for these grants for funding of greenways and waterways. They're doing an extensive look at what our greenway / blueway connections will be and the quality of them throughout the region. So that's going to be a really interesting study to see a report on. Okay, council roundtable, round screen. I'm going to start with Andy because you're top center. So Andy, do you have anything for roundtable?
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Christina, you're next.
Just two really quick things. I just wanted to remind folks that if you're not super comfortable dining in to restaurants, we've got some fabulous restaurants that you can pick up and carry out. This weekend is Valentine's Day. It's a perfect time to do that and support our local restaurants. The second thing is, and I say this because I've gotten probably 2 or 3 text messages about this, and I think, Jane, you had mentioned this actually at our last council meeting, was the Dublin City website. If you just Google Dublin, Ohio COVID volunteer, it'll pop up as the first thing. You just go to that page and you can sign up to volunteer. I've had 3 nurses text me and say, how can I volunteer? And that's the way to do it. And they still need a lot of volunteers because as more vaccine gets out there, the logistics actually get harder because there's more vaccines and more people wanting the vaccine. And so we really need people who can qualify to be vaccinators to get out there and help folks. And then I did want to mention that through work, I was able to get my first vaccine. We had about a 50 to 60% uptake on our staff who were able to get the vaccine. And it went really, really well. And nobody got sick, and little sore arms, maybe a little bit worse than a flu shot, but overall it was really great. And I know there's lots of different reasons for people to get the vaccine. I want to see my mom again. So that's really important to me. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Christina. John?
Yeah, just again, condolences for Pat Moynihan's family. That great guy to work with, and I think all of us in North Dublin owe him a debt of gratitude for working with him on the 745 and Glick Road, getting that intersection finally fixed. Can-do guy, just really positive, bigger than life, and really a great human. So I think we're all going to really miss him. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Jane?
I don't really have anything. I would tag on to what Christina was saying in that even if you're not a medical personnel, you can volunteer with Franklin County Medical Reserve Corps as non-medical. They are looking for people to help with registration, organization, just whatever they need. And I would like to just mention to the public, as Christine has 3 people or 3 nurses calling her, there have been so many that have signed up, and they're probably wondering, we do have, and Dana can talk to this if he wants to, we do have a vaccination program ready and waiting in the on the sidelines. But of course, it really is all dependent on how much vaccine is available through the federal government that feeds down to Franklin County and that we would be able to utilize and help them with. So we just encourage everyone to try to utilize the Ohio Department of Health's website on where available vaccines are. But for those who volunteered for Dublin, as soon as we have something, I'm sure, as Dana will probably reinforce, we'll be up and running and we're ready to go. So that's it. Thanks.
Good. Thanks, Jane. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to join with Dana and John in passing on condolences to Pat Monahan's family. He was a fantastic mayor that did such a great job at representing his community by, at the end of the day, being a really good neighbor. And that his personality, and you always knew when he was in the room, and he will be sorely missed. They will not be able to replace him, but I'm sure they will move on. And I just wanted to extend my condolences to his family as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Kathy?
Yeah, thank you. Just one quick note, and thanks to staff. I think it's going to snow again tonight. I've heard the vicious rumor, and going to snow again later the week. And the staff has just done a really outstanding job with snow removal. And we all appreciate that. And I just wanted to say thank you very much. And thanks in advance for what you're going to do for the rest of the week. So thanks.
That certainly is extremely difficult work and under difficult conditions, and particularly as cold as it's going to get, it only makes it harder. So yes, thank you to all our staff and city folk that pitch in on that. With that, I don't have anything further to add other than to wish all of my colleagues and our staff and the public a happy Valentine's Day coming up on Sunday, and certainly a happy President's Day on Monday. So hopefully those days are quite enjoyable to all. With that, we will stand adjourned, and you all have a wonderful evening.